Hi everybody, we are back for more Stormsunder. I am joined by Gerry and Robert from Lazy Squire Games. This one, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the more beautiful aspects of this game, which is gorgeous minis and absolutely fantastic artwork. Robert, welcome to the show, buddy. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Gerry,
Yes.
this game has an incredible art style, and I mean, like, how would you describe it?
Badly, probably.
Okay, badly. Robert, how would you describe this?
Well, we're going for a comic style artwork, sort of U.S. comic style. Lots of I don't know, exaggerated weapons and things, but still steeped in realism.
It's funny you say about the comic art style, because when you're looking at some of them, and specifically I've got Alexandra's card there, and she has a very it's not Dark Horse Comics. The people who did, or to imagine, the people who did Witchblade and that sort of thing, where you've got those the feral claws, but you don't necessarily see the distinction between fingernail and hand. You just get these sort of deformations, and I really like just the sharp line drawings, because I'm a bit of a comic nerd when it comes to certain things.
Yeah. For me, I love it because it really gives you a sense and a flavour of the world. Because, I mean, like the cover of the rulebook is one that you particularly like, Gerry.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's just a stunner.
It just instantly introduces you to this world where everything is horrible. There's this massive storm, but there are still people out there adventuring and fighting.
Yeah. And you see Vanessa wandering through there, and you're wondering, well, who is she? What's she doing? Why is she out in that storm? And who's beneath that hat? And the answer may surprise you when you finally get to see what's beneath that hat, because it's, she's not exactly looking the best under there these days, I have to say. I do have Vanessa's card somewhere. There we go.
Ah, yes, there you go.
And she, in and of herself, has been on the receiving end of some brutalism at some point. But you were telling me earlier, Robert, that this is more or less the brainchild of yourself via...
You mean like the world?
Oh, no. The art design, the ideas that you just take the figures.
It's a collaborative effort. I don't do anything alone. But I mean, some of the character ideas, like Vanessa, and having the sort of the side of her face looking a little messed up, that kind of stuff, sure. But I mean, a lot of times, we'll say, well, we'll tell the artist, well, we want to have, a vampire. He's, strong or something like that, and then the artist just runs with it and knocks it out of the park. And even if it's something that I didn't imagine in my head, I can say, yes, that's awesome, we're going to go with that. I don't care what I have to change. That looks legit. We're going to keep that. So yeah, I'm not a one-man army by any means, but I mean, the overall world, yes, I had this idea of this endless storm and the people that populated around it, but the artists, our illustrator and then the sculptors have run with that and just done an amazing job.
You were saying you were doing stick figure drawings and stuff, and once you've got the stick figures down, all they're really doing is tracing.
And have you never seen the requirement for storyboards in movies? It has to start somewhere.
Yeah, you've done the hard work by getting the stick figures on the page. People have just come in and just traced bits around. No, that's easy.
To be clear, I only do that to taunt our artists. I don't actually do that for. I use words to describe characters.
Oh well,
I've seen our artist do storyboards. He did some for possible animation we were going to do for Stormsunder, and yeah, it's not stick figures. It looks amazing. So I have no illusions on who's in charge when it comes to art.
I have to say, there are a lot of components in this, an awful lot of components, from the actual tiles themselves to the various tokens, the cards, the character cards. I imagine that there were multiple people working on this, but then you told me no.
Really? You chained one person to a desk? How long did that take?
Yeah, we have one illustrator, and he's amazing. I mean, we have a guy who does graphic design as well, but I mean, when you're talking about the illustrations, all the cards, all of the heroes, adversaries, every deck, it's one illustrator, and he's a beast.
He really is, because the contents, when you're starting even to look at the base game that's coming, and there's, well, the enemy cards and hero cards are the same size. Now, I know for some games you'll get a very small enemy card because
Yeah,
it
those
doesn't,
like little minion
yeah,
cards.
so a tiny card that doesn't have the same amount of detail on it. Whereas this, in many respects, all they've done is double the amount of hero cards. So really, there's 67. I think they're like A5 size cards with gorgeous artwork on them. Then there's multiple decks. So you're looking at, what's that, 5, 6, 7, 800 various sized cards for the abilities, the look cards, the signature cards, all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
all the goodness.
That is madness. And the fact that one person has managed to churn all of this out, and it's not just that they've churned it out, they've kept a consistent quality throughout it, and still had that feel, is absolutely outstanding. I am a complete, I'm in love. Let's face it, I am in love.
See, I quite like the idea of this because it means that it's one brain doing it, one coherent sort of vision of what the style should be, rather than trying to pair that out amongst multiple people where they might have slightly different styles that they would be bringing to it. That can look cool in some things, but having a coherent sort of art style is really good for a game like this.
So, cards are nice.
Yes, cards are always nice.
Boards are good.
Boards are great.
Tiny Fighting Men
are amazing.
They really are. And because of the way Stormsunder is built around a couple of different areas, you can have two fairly distinct feels to the adversaries in it. Obviously, the heroes are a disparate group, so they have their own sort of flavour behind them. But if we have a look at some of the tar pit villains to begin with.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have here a tar pit inquisitor. And the detail on this is absolutely divine. There's, well, twin crossbow action is always good for a laugh. We've been very lucky to be sent in a set that has been painted up so that John actually managed to get some sleep this week. Which we may not get again in future, but there you go. But the idea that the tar pit vampires have this, I suppose, almost classical bat motif vampire look to them, while at the same time being very distinct, being very unique, and having the overall theme running throughout them. So you go, well, clearly this is part of the same force as the Inquisitor, and they're part of the same force as the tar pit guard or whatever it happens to be. But at the same time, you can turn around then, and with your second set for the Makati Empire, you can have the warriors, you can have the guardians and jackals looking different, but still unique factions within that is excellent.
Well, I really am excited to play against some of the more Egyptian feel faction, because I've always loved that sort of design aesthetic, especially, I mean, like, I used to love looking at the Tomb Kings. Never built an army, but I always wanted one. Oh, yes, look at that guy.
But that's one of the Spectral Jackals. And these are beasts, because you've got multiple sized miniatures in the game. You've got your sort of one square, one field miniature, but then you've got larger ones that they occupy a bit more footprint, and they really do draw the eye. You've got this absolutely gorgeous, screaming, four-armed abomination, I'm going to say.
Rocking out with 4 Kopesh.
Yeah. See, I knew there was a name for it. We were just going with Egyptian scythe thing. And we were happy with Egyptian scythe thing.
Yeah, but I'm kind of a weapons nut.
Well, it's one way of doing it, certainly. But the initial game itself, the initial Heirs of Ruin, is coming with an astounding amount of models within that. Something like, is it 100, Robert, that you've got coming for the...
base game, Heirs of Ruin is 100 miniatures, yes. Not counting stretch goals or early birds or whatever else. Just straight in the box. And
then that's I assume that's the core pledge whenever people are diving in, they're getting that 100 miniatures.
Yep.
Very cool. Very, very cool. You're spoiling us.
Really are, because apart from having the various adversaries and heroes that are in there, even things like weapon racks and bits of sort of furniture, dungeon furniture, for want of a better word, the likes of columns, they've all been rendered.
Yeah.
The urns, the weapon racks, the improvised barricades, rune statues, they're all there and they all look fantastic. Or even levers for people to pull. Although if you're ever in a dungeon, you should never pull a lever. I mean, it goes without,
pull it every time.
Goes without saying.
Every time. Now, those aren't included in the base pledge.
Right.
We have tokens to represent those,
right.
Just because of the sheer number of miniatures we had already. They're in the first expansion. But we basically wanted to have a strong showing, a variety of enemies for folks to play against in that initial outing of Stormsunder. And so we kind of focused on the three groups. We had the Makati characters, who are the Egyptian themed ones. We have the tar pit vampires, and then we have the sort of we call them unbound, but they're the kind of like random encounter folks, the people that you would meet in the desert, or mostly monsters, honestly. And so that way there was a variety, either within the faction, but also you're not always facing the same kind of faction as well.
Well, it's one thing that makes me really happy with this, because most like role-playing-esque games that you rock into, what's the first mission you always get that you get bored of? Killing rats. There are no killing rats in this, as far as I can see so far. That makes me happy.
Giant demon dogs.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, demon dogs, it's not a rat.
It's true.
Well, to each their own, so you say, to each their own. I'm amazed at the amount of detail, especially in the likes of the heroes. If I pull in some of the heroes here. So I've actually got all 6 with me, but if I get one of the cards for one of our heroes and show them, so we've got Vanessa here. So that's Vanessa's card. And then the miniature itself. There's a gorgeous amount of work that has gone into that. So even if you're not planning on painting these up, you'll be able to see just the sheer detail in there. And it matches so much of the detail on the artwork. They really are a thing of beauty. But it's the fact that you've managed to have this recreated across even the individual adversaries. So the detail on the Inquisitor, on the tar pit guards, is no less than the sort of level of detail that you're seeing on the heroes. These weren't all the work of one sculptor.
So we have 10 sculptors that have worked on the project, some more than others. We have one main sculptor who's done a lot of work for us, and he's done an amazing job. I think he did all of the heroes that you have. I think he did most of or if not all of the tar pit characters, and probably most of the Egyptian stuff. So it might be more of the expansions that we expanded. I couldn't tell you who did exactly which sculpts, but we've under his sort of leadership of the other sculptors, we've had a sort of a singular art direction and a style that has really shown through in all the sculpts.
Yeah, if you look at Alexander, so if I shift those back, it's Alexander's card. And then as far as a roguish vampire goes, he matches his card beautifully well. He's got a very fine, sort of light, single-handed sword, because he favors sword and dagger. But when you look at that as a very poised, static pose, I don't mean static in a negative way, but he's very serene. He's not particularly animated. And you compare him to his sister, who is the berserking, feral, clawed vampire, and she just has that look like she's going to go off her nut at any moment.
Yeah, or rip your throat out.
Yeah, or leap through the air. So they have that sibling feel between the pair of them, but at the same time there is that, you really get the idea of the feel behind the character, the archetype that the miniature represents, which I just absolutely adore. I mean, every one of these is a thing of beauty, and I would quite happily pay to paint any of these up, never mind play the game, because there's a wealth of detail in here. Now, at the moment, you're still exploring options for the actual production of the miniatures.
Yeah, we don't want to settle, is what it comes down to. We want to make sure that the most detail possible is retained, because our miniatures are dripping with them. So we're we have some factories that are going to give us samples of our sculpts versus just samples that they've done before, so that we can make sure that we have the best detail possible when we actually ship.
Yeah, I think that's key, really, because the amount of detail that's gone into these masters, into these prototypes, is absolutely stunning. And I can imagine that, yes, if they were all being rendered in resin, you'll not worry that you're going to be losing any detail. So there's like brocade and Davor's coat there and the fur around him. All of that detail is there. It's crisp. But when you're looking to mass produce it, there will be a trade-off, I suspect, between level of detail and then obviously getting it produced in a acceptable manner. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that you manage to retain. Every time I see a Kickstarter these days, the level of quality in the manufacturer seems to be going up and up and up. No longer are we just seeing the sort of very soapy PVC miniatures these days. And I think these deserve to get there because they're almost a boutique line of sculpts in and of themselves.
See, it's one thing that always makes me sad in the past. Whenever I see an artist or a sculptor has done so much work to create a true artistic piece, and then it gets sent to somewhere in, say, China, Poland, wherever, it doesn't matter, and it just gets pooped out. And you're just sitting there with that poopy little miniature, and it's just like, but it could have been so much more.
Well, you're not rushed for this, at least. You're planning on delivering the Kickstarter in 2 years, isn't that right? It's March 22.
We're looking at 2-wave shipping, but yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that we have plenty of time. We don't want to be late, but we also, there's a lot that will go into making this game a reality. So we want to make sure that we have enough time, and that part of that will include tooling to make sure that the miniatures retain as much detail as possible.
I think it's really, with something like this where it is, like I say, it is practically bespoke miniatures, taking the extra time, because too often you see Kickstarters especially where people almost want to see it like a pre-order, where if I backed it today, am I not getting it this year? And you go, well, no, you're not. I'd rather see that long lead up time and get a product that's worth the investment at the end of the day.
Well, it's something a lot of people have forgot with Kickstarter is it's not a pre-order system. No. It's a way for people to bring their dream of whatever it is to life and to the public.
Is there a particular miniature that you're happy with, proud of, or do you have a go-to one that you like yourself then, Robert? Is there one that features heavily?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Vanessa. She was one of the first ones we had. But the Vampire High Council characters that we have so far, Lord Rehard, Lord Gregor, and Lady Renata all look gorgeous. We kind of made them a little more epic in size. Vampires are a little bit bigger than the humans in the game anyway, and so are the angels, and Lady Renata is both. So there's just when you see them on the board, it gives like this sense of awe. Hotem Ra is also fairly amazing. He has all the little Makati warriors, etc., like clawing at his robes at his base.
Crawling forward or digging themselves out of the sand, I suppose, more than anything else. Weirdly, I would have picked Lady Renata as well. Even the fact that she's got the little blurb that only one angel has ever been turned to a vampire to begin with, and you're going, well, that's unusual. But the sculpt itself looks absolutely amazing.
For me, it has to be the guard captain Sever. There's just a beautiful dynamism to the miniature. You actually have her standing there.
With her two blades. She's good.
Simply gorgeous work.
There's a lot to be said for that. We also have there's an early bird model coming with the Kickstarter, which we have a copy of here, which didn't manage to get painted before they sent us the rest of the stuff, but I'm glad they shipped it without getting it painted, because it means we can put John to work at some point. What is this in the game then? Because it looks like she's actually rising up from the ruins of a ancient city in the desert herself.
So that's Feyre, the last Titan. She's not actually rising up; she's walking through a city.
She's kicking away through. Delightful.
You can see that like there's rocks jutting up from where she's dropped her sword. You also notice that she has no elbows. I'm looking to the left because I have her sitting over there, but she also has no torso, or at least she's missing a piece of her torso. She's basically, we're trying to run a sort of theme through our games. And in Wild Ascent, I don't know if you guys ever saw the miniature we had where it used a lot of negative space. I'm totally drawing a blank on what it was called. But basically, it was a statue in the ground, and it had its shoulders and like the start of its arms, and then its fists were in the ground. So there was a gap. And the idea was that, even though the stone is gone, he's still there.
Yes.
And so he can move his arms around just fine. And the same idea is with Feyre. These are servants of the gods that have been abandoned, and so she's walking through basically a miniature city. That's as soon as she walks away from it, it regenerates, and then it's sort of a side quest that the heroes can embark on, a little extra adventure for loot and glory. But so I just, she is to scale to the city because the city isn't a real city.
Yeah.
We have a couple other ones. I think the Titans in the last expansion, it's the same kind of thing because they're kind of in the same area. And so, she's just roaming that city, walking around, and the heroes might come across her if you have the miniature and want to partake in that quest.
Well, there's a question. So, how would people lay their hands on this particular miniature? I'm hearing early bird, or are you still pinning down the final details for that?
We posted the preview page, I think, on the 13th, and we've had a lot of feedback, and so we're taking that feedback and we're going to be looking at what we can do to make people happy, but also keeping what we the game we want to make. So I think the early bird part is going to stay. It'll be available to people for basically a token amount afterwards. We don't want people to feel like, oh, well, I missed the early bird and now I have to pay $40 or something. It won't be anything like that. Right now, we're having it be part of the largest pledge, so you just get it with if you want to get all the Heirs of Ruin and the 2 expansions. And so and then of course we do that, and then people are like, well, what if I want to go all in at the beginning? Can't you give me an early bird? And then it kind of spirals out of control.
Yeah.
So we're still looking at exactly what we want to do based off of all that very numerous and emphatic feedback. But for right now, she's an early bird. If you back within the first 72 hours, she will be yours. Well, and she's gorgeous.
Yeah, she really is. The way you've played with the negative space on there looks absolutely fantastic. I want to see someone play with some object source lighting from the broken points, just to see how that would look.
Yeah, it's like I said, I really wanted to have that sort of running theme between our games, and the that sort of negative space stone giant thing, I think, is going to be one of those things that you'll see in, if not all of our games, most of our games, just as an overarching multiverse style theme.
Very cool. All right. Is there anything else you would like to cover?
Miniature wise?
Yeah. We've been showing minis as we went.
Yeah. I would just say for the vampires, for example, you had mentioned about the theme. We went with a sort of classic vampire look, but the one thing that we had in the back of our minds is that we wanted it to be, you don't usually have a whole city of vampires, and that's what we had. And we also, they took that city, so we wanted to have sort of an army of vampires. And so we kind of took that classic, gothic, bat-based look and applied, armor to it so that, they could have a standing armor. You could see them invading a city and taking it over, and so it kind of moved a little bit away from the classic, but still kept that feel that okay, I can see that this is a vampire. But yeah, our sculptors did an amazing job, and every single miniature I can just stare at for quite a while and see all the tiny little details.
Well, I'm sure people are going to have to keep an eye on this one just to see what you guys come up with as well for stretch goals or whatever. So I'm super excited, and I cannot wait to get this down just to actually start playing some games of it, because from what we've done off camera so far, I have really enjoyed just the mechanics, the feel of it, and the aesthetics. It's actually just a pleasing game to look at and play with.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And we'll be doing our best to get some of these lovely painted miniatures up on the site as well, so that other people can enjoy these, because they are just absolutely stunning, even down to the tank.
Yeah. All right. I think we'll call it at that, gents. So everybody, get your comments in below. Tell us what you think of the art style for this game. We will move on and keep an eye out in the comments because I'm sure we'll all be keeping an eye on them as well. We'll move on. We'll see you again soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.